Finally, I managed to set up. Usually, weird place. Anyway, so I'm back, and I have no idea what to talk about because I've been working on kind of a script to talk about what's going on today, and I'm gonna read it out at some point if it's ever finished. I just have trouble finishing things, you know. I'm someone who's never satisfied with anything. So if I write something, I'm like, that's not good enough. But yeah, I mean, I thought it would take a while before I'm done. So might as well just make a video in the interim. I only have an hour until the storage is out. So I have to be sort of quick. But yeah. Let's see. I guess the topic that's been on my head, in my mind, is that people are no good pieces of crap. It's not a very positive message, but yeah, it's just I've been just thinking about, for example, not being a vegan, right? So I used to be one for a couple of years, but I essentially gave up. And you know, you can already attack me if you like and say, oh, what a piece of shit you are. Yeah, but I think it's not just me. You know, I've been thinking about how, if we are really honest, then we would all be kind of pieces of crap. Like, you know, we accept things that are totally unacceptable. None of us actually believe it's okay to do what we do to animals, but we do it anyway because we don't have to face the consequences. And none of us think it's okay to have inequality and all that stuff, but we accept it because it's not us. We might fight against it a little bit, but only a little bit, before we get too tired and give up. You know, it's just we're not good people. I think not even religion saves you from that, because from a religious point of view, you could say like, but you'll face judgment day. It's like, yeah, you'll face judgment day, but like, it's already too late, you know. First of all, religion in real life doesn't seem to predispose people to be good. I know religious people might give more to charity. Maybe that's true. Maybe they're more charitable. But in terms of like how good they are as people in general, like how accepting they are, how progressive they are, whether they're vegan or not, you know, you're not gonna find too many, you know, leftists and vegans among Christians. So they might be better in some way, but in many important ways they aren't. I mean, Christians, just try to find like a fascist who isn't a Christian today. Like, so I think the point is that even religion, even the highest, you know, the transcendent solution, actually still fails to be a solution, because it still justified slavery. It's still like, you know, one argument people might give, religious people might give, is, well, if we don't have religion, then everything is permitted. But what's the failure of it? Why does that argument fail? It fails for the very simple reason that even though the West is very Christian, the United States is very Christian, and maybe the founding fathers were inspired by Christianity, it still didn't stop slavery from happening. Even though many people are Christian and we have Christian roots, it doesn't seem to stop anything bad from actually happening. doesn't seem to stop wars from happening, doesn't seem to stop slaughterhouses from existing, doesn't seem to stop hate from existing. It actually creates hate because it discriminates against gay people and so on. And so, you know, if you look at the Bible, it even justified genocide of the Canaanites. God told the Hebrews to kill them all, including the donkeys. It justifies misogyny, right? Eve comes out of the the side of Adam, like the ribs of Adam. It justifies homophobia. You know, if two men live with each other, it's an abomination. I'm pretty sure there's something in there about, you know, wives, listen to your husbands, you know. And so, even the transcendent, and with Islam it's even more obvious when you look at it. So, even the transcendent isn't good enough to save us. This was basically the only hope. Because what could be a bigger hope than transcendence, heaven, God, the guy who knows everything and can figure everything out. But it turns out, even that's not good enough. Like, if you go to, even if there is a God, it doesn't actually fix any problem. It doesn't tell us how to solve problems. It doesn't tell us, like it might tell us that the 10 Commandments, you know, murder is wrong, do not kill, do not lie, do not, you know, covet thy neighbor's goods, thou shalt not have strange gods before me, honor thy father, thy mother. Okay, but what happens if your mother is a piece of shit, or if your father is a piece of shit? What if God is an asshole and hasn't fixed the world? Why should I care? Why should I bow down to him? What about lying and cheating and murder? Well, if you apply that to a real circumstance in the world, you will find that it doesn't actually help. Because what I consider murder, you might consider self-defense. And we see that playing out in Ukraine, we're seeing that playing out in Palestine. Pretty much all conflicts have that in them. Nobody ever says I'm murdering. They're always self-defense. They're always defending themselves. And so, you know, reverting to scripture to solve that problem doesn't really solve the problem. Like appealing to scripture. Okay, how do we solve this problem? This guy wants to kill that guy. What do we do about it? Well, we say murder is wrong. Okay, but that's the problem. This guy says he's defending himself. The other guy says he's also defending himself. So who is the one doing the murder? Well, God doesn't say. God doesn't tell us. God doesn't tell us if we should accept quantum mechanics as, you know, the fundamental part of like the universe, or some other, you know, physical system. It doesn't tell us whether we should have socialism or capitalism. It did fail to tell us about antibiotics. It failed to tell us all kinds of shit. And so the problem that I see with religious morality is that it's basically worthless. Its only function is a kind of formalistic morality, and the formalistic description of reality, which isn't even a good one, isn't even accurate. But the most important part of a religion like Christianity is what it says we ought to do, which is, again, do not murder, do not kill, do not cheat, do not lie. And yet, when you try to apply these simplistic notions to reality, they fail pretty miserably. And so, not even religion could help us fix the world. If anything, it just fucked it up even more, right? But in the absence of religion, what do we have? Evolution. Ew. Murder is not wrong objectively. Nothing is wrong objectively. It's just the DNA molecule. It's just atoms banging into each other. And they do create something that is bigger than that. But it doesn't have any fundamental significance. There's no purpose. There's no heaven. There's no morals other than the ones that we evolved to have and create in ourselves. But fundamentally there's no point. And that seems to be a lot better explanation of what reality is. Like, that aligns with what we see around us a lot better. When we look around us, we don't see objective morality. We don't see God. We don't see love all that much. What we see is a tree falls down and kills somebody. What we see is hate and division. It is not the creation of a God. It's just a semi-random mutation on a mediocre planet. And once you take that evolution pill, wow, it becomes pretty easy to explain why we behave the way we do. And there's not much hope left, unfortunately. Like, one realization that I've had, one epiphany that I've had, is that whenever I make a prediction or I make an argument about what the world is, until recently, I didn't actually know that I was right. I didn't actually know that I was smart enough to be right. And only in the past few months that I had to realize that it was only in the past few months that I realized that, when I make pessimistic proclamations, they're correct. And they're correct because for some reason I have the kind of brain that matches very well with reality. And that's just chance. I could be a completely different person. I could be just mumbling something about the Bible right now and preaching to you. And the only reason I'm not is because my brain doesn't work that way. And so it's really disturbing to me that I'm only what I am because of some contingency. And what is even more disturbing to me is that I'm right. And also that I can't help being what I am. No matter what I do, on a fundamental level, I'll always be the same. Even if I change myself, I will always change myself from within my own reality, my own limitations, my own perspective. And so in what sense could that be the truth? Why am I walking around with the truth? Can I say that I have the truth even though I'm contingent? Well, I think in some way I can, but by accident. I somehow managed to get the right answers to most questions. So for example, over a year ago I made a video where I was talking about how like history is not linear, it's actually quite cyclical, and people can change at any moment. You can have a pleasant liberal society, the day after you can have Nazi Germany, which is exactly what happened and is now happening to an extent. If you've been paying attention to politics today, you know that this has been happening, right? If you pay close attention, you'll see. People are now getting comfortable saying slurs, right? I heard some person who was in Congress, I don't know how powerful that person was, but they used the slur against trans people in Congress, in like some official meeting. Then there was some lady who called a black child the N-word, and then there was a GoFundMe and they raised like $750,000 for the mother, not the child. You're having these aggressive anti-migrant policies with Trump, but they're making an exception for South African white farmers, apparently. So they're kicking out anyone who isn't white, and then bringing in people who are white, just because they're white. So this is pretty concerning. This is happening pretty quick, which is exactly what I said about a year ago. I said, look, a little gust of wind is enough to blow everything down. And that seems to be happening today. And so people are just really stupid. They're really contingent. They believe one thing today and something else tomorrow. That's why I was vegan for a couple of years and then I gave up. Even though I haven't changed my mind, the psychology is enough, right? I just don't care enough. I don't care enough to be a volunteer. I don't care enough to donate my money away. I don't care enough to put myself in danger to protect others. I just don't have it in me. But it's not like I'm right about that. I'm just selfish. So, returning back to the Bible, I realized that, people apply biblical rules like scripture, in a very convenient way. So sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So, for example, in the Bible, they cherry pick, right? So in the Bible, there's like people who are like 900 years old, right? And then they have kids, and their kids are like 400 years old, or whatever the fuck. Like, and they have kids, and their kids are like 200 years. So it's like nobody actually believes that. You never hear anybody talk about that. How, there used to be people who were 900 years old. Nobody actually believes that, but many of them believe that homosexuality is wrong. But what's the difference? They're both in the Bible. They're both scripture. But they take one and not the other. It's completely, or the resurrection of Jesus. And many of them believe that. Even though they're both kind of impossible. They believe one and not the other. So even if it's like the same category, if it's a miracle, they believe one miracle and not the other. So I think one fundamental reason why you should be a pessimist, I guess, it's not because it's nice, but because it's true to be a pessimist rather than being an optimist. Because what is there to look forward to? Exactly. I mean, you can take a look at AI and you can see that more and more students are now using AI, so they're getting dumber. So I realized when I was looking around political debates, people just talking about life, people talking about politics, I realized that most people are, even the ones who are smart enough to talk about politics, are really stupid. And sometimes I just think to myself, am I a genius? Or is everybody else stupid? Because when I listen to them, I feel like I'm about 400 times smarter. And I realize, it doesn't really matter which one is true. What what matters is people are stupid. Even if I'm stupid, well, they're even dumber. It doesn't really matter if I'm a genius. What matters is we're all stupid. Or even if we're not stupid, we're lazy. We're cowards. I used to have an ex who, would call me a coward and useless. And even though that was mean, it's true. But so is everyone else. So is like 95% of people. They're complacent. They let almost anything happen. Right? So people have been talking about this. Like, is transgenderism is like is it like a real thing, or is it just some fad? And I realized, but even that question is a fad. Like, even the theory that being trans is a social contagion is itself a social contagion. You don't get to say that your identity as a cis white man is like the objective, correct, good, and everybody else who deviates from that is stupid or degenerate or wrong. All identities are bullshit. So I think you can apply this in both directions. Like, lately there's been a boom in people accepting gay people. Like, when you look at polls from like 30 years ago, acceptance of same-sex marriage was probably like 10% or 15% or whatever, or even less. Today, in somewhere like the US, it's like 60 to 70%. And you can easily say, like, Where were you guys when you were needed? The gay people don't need you now, they needed you before they had any rights. And you were not there. 5% of people were there. And 4% of them were probably gay. You always come too late. And that's okay, that's not like somebody once accused me of like an appeal to futility. No. You can still do things. But you need to recognize that you're a piece of crap. You need to be honest enough to recognize that even if you do something good, it's probably just a social contagion. So, in one of my videos, I devised this thought experiment that I call the gate of authenticity, or the authenticity test. And I said, well, imagine that you could take a guy, some progressive guy today, pluck him up and then plop him down 50 years ago, maybe in the same place. Some guy living in Orange County, California, to take an example. Because California is like really progressive, so I just picked the place. Or Brussels, I don't know, anything. Do you think he would retain his progressive beliefs? And the answer is probably no. Right? Or even worse, if you could transpose someone from today to Nazi Germany, would they be a Nazi? Unfortunately, the answer is probably yes. Because people have shown no evidence that their spirit is strong enough. They have shown no evidence that they really care all that much. Because even though they might virtue signal, right? So virtue signaling, I think, is one of the most important words that came out of the anti-woke people. Because it's true. People do virtue signal. But they do it on both sides. And that's a terrible thing. Because it makes them complacent. It makes them think they've done enough. They've done enough. And I just realized that I'm autistic, so autistic people have a tendency to pace back and forth in their room and kind of, imagine to live instead of living. So it might actually be a rise of autism or autistic behavior. So maybe RFK Jr. is right. No, only in some very limited sense. There might actually be some increase in autism. Because I think when you look at what autism is, it's basically just a series of behaviors. Avoiding eye contact, stimming, pacing back and forth, being selectively mute. These are autistic traits. And autism is basically just that. And it's a way of looking at the world. So if you don't want to call it a behavior, I guess not all of it is a behavior, but most of it is. And so the problem is that people are behaving like autistics without having the intelligence that usually comes with being a high-functioning autist. They just pace back and forth, they avoid eye contact, they stay at home. But they don't have any of the analytical intelligence that usually comes with it, because they're being dumbed down by social media. They're being dumbed down by AI. Everything is done for them. You don't have to go to a bank. There's a neobank. You don't have to. You actually have these banks that you can't even go to physically. Don't have to do paperwork or meet people. Don't have to walk because you have like an electric scooter. Don't have to go to the store. You can order something. And then you're exploiting your fellow Gen Z person who is giving you the food. DoorDash. And they think it makes them free to do DoorDash. Even though they're not going to have a pension. Even though they're going to fuck up their back and all that. Even though they have no security, which causes anxiety. Even though they can't afford a house. Many of them still accept. They might complain about it, but they accept the compromise of, I can do whatever I want. I can jerk off as many times as I want. I can have sex with people. In any position, in any way. I can work 4 hours a day, or 8 hours a day, or 12 hours a day. Because I don't have a boss in the schedule. I can invest in 1,000 different cryptocurrencies. Maybe it will pump. And I shall go to the moon. Even though 99% of people probably lose on crypto. Or barely make any money. Don't forget about the opportunity cost. The time cost. Of what you're wasting your time on. Time is limited. The younger you are, the less you understand how little time you have. And so on and so on. AI, people being stupid. I'm pretty sure there's actually been studies to show that people are getting dumber now. Which is something I made the argument for, but it seems it's actually correct. So again, I'm terrified at the fact that I'm right. I don't want to be, but I am. So it's no wonder that people are more anti-natalistic now, right? That's another thing that I predicted. About a year ago, I quite specifically said that anti-natalism will become a problem and right-wingers will become more and more militaristic about natalism because they're afraid of being replaced by immigrants. Quite specifically, I said this, and it's getting, even the Republicans now are considering tax breaks for parents, which is kind of unprecedented for Republicans because they never do tax breaks. They never do. They never do like tax breaks for poor people. They never do. They only ever help rich people, and they're now considering giving welfare to even poorer people, so that they will have kids. I think that's what they said. And that's unprecedented. So they're afraid. Yeah, I think it was child tax credits or whatever it was. Problem is I think they have some kind of scheme where if you have tax breaks, or tax credit, the more money you make, the more you make back. So it benefits richer people again. But so they might just they might just want to exclude people who are not native. I don't know. I have to look into that. What they're scheming right now. Anyway, so it's no wonder that anti-natalism has been an issue because people are afraid and people are depressed. What I didn't anticipate was that even some leftists are afraid of this. Right? I've seen some leftists talk about this, that it's actually a problem that we don't have enough kids. I didn't think they would care. But that's kind of an addition to the equation. I thought leftists would just be okay, just sort of dying. But even some of them seem to be anxious about the prospect of not having enough people which is understandable, because if you don't have enough people, the economy will get fucked. And I mean, I can understand it, but I didn't anticipate that even leftists would care too much. So I wonder where this is gonna go. Like, I feel like one reason why the old capitalist system cannot survive is because of natalism, because you need to fund people's existence. So the right wingers really fucked up in undercutting the middle class, undercutting the working class, because they are now retaliating by not having enough kids. And now they're like, whoa, hold on. The fucking peasants always gave us fucking workers, and now they're not. What are we gonna do? Let's give them tax breaks. Let's give them child tax credits. Let's shower them with money. And even that doesn't seem to be enough, because there are the natalist policies in different countries like Hungary, and it's still not working. So the only solution they have now is immigrants. But that's a problem for them, because they don't like immigrants. So I feel like the status of immigrants today is a political tool, but not just from the left. Right? People give this conspiracy that they're actually like importing immigrants so that they will vote progressive. But hold on a second, the right wing can do that too. The right wing can instigate against immigrants and then bring them in, which creates even more division, even more hate. So they, it's like it's not necessarily a progressive agenda to have immigrants. Plus, they need the workers. So in my country, for example, in Hungary, Orban, right, the authoritarian guy, increasingly more authoritarian every year, he built his entire campaign on anti-immigrant rhetoric, and yet we have hundreds of thousands of immigrants in the country. So he does need them. But it might even be darker. Like, it might actually be, okay, let's bring in the immigrants. Some of them are going to misbehave, and I can use that for my campaign again. So I'll bring them in, then I'll tell people I kick them out. There's all kinds of fucked up machinations going on here, It's really hard to even track or prove what these people even are trying to do. So I'm just saying, it's a really fucked up, weird time. Conspiratorial thinking is not really off the table, because people are conspiring all over the fucking place. Everything is breaking down. It used to be this way. Everything used to have order. And now it's breaking down into 1,000 different bits. Right? People don't know what's going on anymore. They're not sure if climate change is going to kill everyone. They're not sure if COVID is going to kill everyone. They're not sure they have a future. They're not sure they can buy a house. They're not sure. Well, they are sure they can't, but they're not even sure of their own gender, which is not I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but that's another point. That's another part of this thing, that we have broken, the order has broken down so badly. People don't even know what gender they are. So, you're even questioning your sexuality. Am I bisexual? Like, don't tell me that's not true. People are now questioning all the time. Nothing is ever certain anymore. So there is some truth to that. That there is a good amount of confusion that didn't used to be here. Only you don't have to read that as like a conservative critique. It's just part of our lives. We used to have order. Now we don't have order. We live in a society that's just filled with lies and propaganda and illiteracy, altcoins, and COVID and climate change, and no jobs, no pensions. no husbands and no wives, no, like this all breaking down. And I said before that can actually be an opportunity. This kind of breaking down, that everything has to be an alternative. So Margaret Thatcher used to say, like, there is no alternative. Well, now it's the opposite. Now there's only alternative. Right? In the sense that people are not looking for a solution anymore. They're looking for alternatives to solutions. Right? Nobody actually buys like one path to go. It's always this, that, this, that, this, So if you don't believe me, right? Like Slavoj Žižek made the same critique of gender, kind of gender ideology that but this like flux of gender identity, this is part of the system today. You don't have a permanent job, it's an offer, it's an opportunity. It's an offer of an opportunity, not an imposition. But that's part of the ideology. So nobody looks for solutions anymore. Nobody's looking for a steady way forward, an equilibrium, a golden path, a golden ratio, or whatever the fuck. They're always looking for alternatives to everything. Goldilocks, no Goldilocks. No more Goldilocks. And so there's some truth in that. To be radical today is to find an identity and stick with it. Just like I couldn't stick with veganism. Just like I couldn't stick... I used to call myself an anarchist, but like... I feel like if you're a pessimist, that's all you can be. I don't really believe there will be a revolution. I don't really believe there will be a socialist state. I don't really believe it will work out in the end. So even though everything is open, my overarching pessimistic point is that it's not going to close and produce something good in the end, right? I don't see how our current situation is moving us towards some brilliant future, some dialectical endpoint of utopia. Doesn't seem to be that way because we're not really dealing with our problems. And much of that is because of fucking Trump. Because he's a fucking science denier. Because they have cultivated a constituency of like morons who don't believe in science, who don't believe in climate change, who don't believe in COVID rules, who don't believe in vaccination. We're done. Trump actually pulled out of the World Health Organization, which is very important. It develops vaccines, it does a lot of like, it's internationalism which is necessary today, and he's pulling out. He's becoming an isolationist. Terrible, terrible thing to be today, because we need collective action for climate change, for COVID, that future COVID strands that might show up, for, I don't know, measles outbreak, whatever. And he's doing the opposite. He's doing a tariff, he's doing a trade war. And then, the sycophant Trump supporters, so it's basically a religion now. Anything Trump does is good, right? If he imposes a tariff, that's, that's him being a genius. If he takes off the tariff, that's him being a genius again. So, but the Republicans need to concede that they're no longer the party of order. The right wing is no longer the side of order. They're degenerate children who can't behave at the table. They don't believe in science, right? If you look at somebody like Trump, he's just blatantly a criminal, right? Who inspired an insurrection against the US government, a coup on the US government, and then he told them, stand back and stand by. You're special. Stand back and stand by. And then he pardoned all of them. I think it was around 1,400 of them. I don't know. Including the blatantly like white supremacist fascists. You know, Proud Boys and all that. So, to me, the biggest tragedy of Trump is not so much his policies. Oh, what policies? Like, why do you hate Trump? Name a policy. I don't really care about the policies. The biggest problem that Trump unleashed upon the world, the biggest evil that he has unleashed upon the world, is his personality, is his skepticism of authority, his undermining of authority, which we need more than ever. His stupid illiteracy, his constant lies, of which there's been 30,000 of them recorded. You know, lying about where Obama was born, about, you know, all kinds of racism, all kinds of we have the greatest border, we have the greatest economy, oil that's, you know, under $2 when it's not, you know. I mean, he constantly lied. You can pick it up easily. Like, he was tell a lie like Kamala never passed the bar. And you look at it and she did. Constantly lying. Okay, and then just being against democracy. Just, you know, so then now they don't want to have court hearings for the immigrants, right? The illegal immigrants. They don't want to give them a due process, right? And the excuse that there's too many of them. Okay, too many of them. Isn't that weird? That this is the greatest country on earth, so-called the greatest country on earth, but it's so shit it can't deal with some immigrants. Isn't that a strange contradiction in the ideology? And so yeah, I wanted to add that his retardation actually matches up with our retardation, like the retardation of the youth, the illiteracy of the youth, who can't read and can't write, and they use ChatGPT instead. Like, Trump is the perfect president for the youth, because they're both stupid as hell. The first illiterate president. Biden was just old. This guy is just illiterate. And you know, in terms of Musk, there's a contradiction. You know, when he threw up the sea kayak, right? Some people have denied that he did that plane. Some people have denied that he threw up the sea kayak. Now, here's my question. If it is true that Elon Musk did not intend to throw up the sea kayak, the Roman salute, which is a Nazi salute, right? If he did not intend to do it, then why do you think he's the greatest genius who ever lived? Because the right wing loves Elon Musk. Many of them anyway. They have hailed Elon Musk as a giant genius, an innovator. But you're also telling me he's too fucking stupid to differentiate between a wave and the Nazi salute. In my country, I couldn't even I'm pretty sure it's illegal. So I wouldn't do it, but still, you know. So it's a very serious offense. It's a very serious thing to do. Especially in a country that did participate in the Holocaust. Yeah. So, I mean, even the US did, because I'm pretty sure they're like, when Jews came to the US to escape Nazi prosecution, they got turned down. So even the US is guilty to an extent, I think. This is a strange contradiction. Greatest genius who ever lived, richest man in the world, which is a fact, right? But too fucking stupid to differentiate between a wave, and the Sikh Isle. Okay. The greatest country in the world can't fucking take care of some immigrants. The land of the free. You know? I think it's the Fifth Amendment that gives people the right to due process, right? Fourth or Fifth Amendment. I'm not sure which. I think it's the Fifth. No, that's the right to remain silent. I think it's the Fourth. Or Abrego Garcia, who the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that he's to be brought back to the US. And Trump just does nothing. And in terms of the torture chamber that's in El Salvador, it's really strange because people don't seem to be talking about this, but like this already happened before. Like the US already like outsourced torture to the Middle East before, right? And they're doing it again, except now it's in South America. So I was suspicious of that torture chamber even before this happened. I just thought, this is bullshit. This is just this is not gonna work. This is not it. This is just an excuse to impose fear on people and impose totalitarianism on people. So not good. Nothing good is really happening. Civil rights now are being attacked. Not good. War in Ukraine still happening. Palestine. Slaughter still happening. Not good. Nothing's really happening that's good. And in terms of like the white farmers, I heard this argument before that there's a genocide against white farmers. Really strange. I heavily doubt there's any truth to that. But if it is true that like, we need to help these white farmers, what about everyone else? Or what about Ukrainians or people in, other poor, famine-ridden countries? What about them? Why don't we take those people in? So it's just pure racism, right? I mean, I'm not a geopolitical expert, but it's like, why does, like, if the US is really so benevolent, why don't they stop funding Israel? Or why don't they take Palestinians and save them from the genocide? Why don't they take them into the US? Why is it only white farmers? What about people in the Congo or other, other places that are war-ridden, war-torn, famine-laden? I mean, Elon Musk, Doge cut US aid by nearly $2 billion. And now Bill Gates, who is a big philanthropist, right, has now accused Elon Musk of killing millions of the poorest children in the world. The richest man is killing the poorest children in the world. That's true. He cut US aid. Nearly $2 billion. Apparently that will kill about 3 million children. Because it goes to like, they make like paste, of like, like peanuts or whatever. that has like a lot of like vitamins and stuff, minerals, and they cut it. So if you really care about people and genocide, why don't you stop it? Why is it only the white farmers in South Africa? Which is probably a major exaggeration at best. Very fucked up world we're living in. There's something else I wanted to say, but I don't remember. It doesn't really matter. It's just yeah, I was talking about civil rights. Oh yeah, the torture chamber in El Salvador is just what the U.S. did in the Middle East, where they tortured prisoners illegally, right? But it's okay because we're not doing it here. That's the same way we get our computers, right? Slaves make our computers. People who get like $1 a day make our computers. We're all complicit in all this. So we don't just get to turn away the immigrants and the refugees. Because we're all complicit in the global economy and the global kind of warfare that produces poverty and destitution and famine and so on. Yeah. What a nasty world. There's a bug on my lens. I probably want to say something else, but it's like I'm running out of time. So I'm just gonna speak for a while. Yeah, I mean, there's this argument that like the world is getting so much better. The world is getting so much better, you know. And on some measure, it's true. Like child mortality has been cut in half, I think. But they still live miserable lives. So like, it might be true that if you measure extreme poverty by like, $2 a day, like the World Bank measures it by like about $2 a day. If you're living below $2, if you're living on less than $2 a day, then I think it was $2.10. You're living on less than that. You're living in extreme poverty. But if you're living on $4 a day or $6 a day, which is also like nothing, then the numbers are much worse. Like most people live on just a couple of dollars a day. So in what sense can we claim victory? What sense can we say like, oh, capitalism is just done such a marvelous job? Against what? By what metric has it done a marvelous job? And most people who were lifted out of poverty lived in China, which is a totalitarian state. So, it's a totalitarian, like half socialist, half capitalist state. So let's not, most of the people who were lifted out of poverty were not lifted out of poverty because of like the free market. What fucking free market? It's all tightly controlled by governments. It's all tightly controlled by international organizations. What exactly is the free market here? Yeah, of course we should have like companies, investors. Maybe that's okay. I don't really have an alternative. But to pat ourselves on the back for how wonderful capitalism is, it just sounds kind of bullshitty, like this magic thing that showed up and fixed everything. Nah. Not really. Not quite, there is something to the market that does work, but it's by no means free. And if you want to attribute the success of modern economies to capitalism, well, what about the poor countries in capitalism, right? Clearly, capitalism has failed miserably to save millions and millions and millions of people from starvation, famine, and death, and slavery. Like one statistic you might not hear is that there are more slaves in the world than ever before, around 50 million. It's gonna cut off at some point, and I'm done. But yeah, that's sort of left out of the equation. So it might be that capitalism is somehow better than socialism. I think historically that's hard to deny. But it's a really controlled kind of capitalism. One that is controlled heavily by the state. That has to regulate the crashes. I mean, 2008, 2020, the COVID crash was even worse because government spent trillions of dollars bailing out the helpless private sector. So there really is no private. There's no one. It wasn't the government who fucked it up. It was just capitalism. The government didn't fuck up. The government didn't dump the market. It just dumped because everything sort of shut down, and so the government had to bail everything out. Right? So, and most of the modern technology. Damn it. So I got cut off. So most of what we have in the modern economy was in fact created by the state, by state intervention, state funding, in state labs, state universities. So let's be critical of this idea that capitalism has done something. It's the market and the state. But I've sort of run out of storage. This piece of shit old phone. I have to delete like a bunch of shit just to make this really a hassle. Everything is such a hassle. But yeah, I'll try to come back at some point and develop some of these arguments in in script form, so they're more coherent. I'm not just riffing. But I think most of what I said probably was true. We can fact check. But yeah, it's probably best to call it a day. And whatever. Do what we can do. There's nothing else to do. Bye.